Hi, I'm Annette Dubrouillet, and welcome to Chapter 2 of The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Chapter 22 is entitled When the Sun Went Down. They're talking about Ben Weatherstaff here. When his head was out of sight, Colin turned to Mary. "Go and meet him," he said, and Mary flew across the grass to the door under the ivy. Dickon was watching him with sharp eyes. There were scarlet spots on his cheek, and he looked amazing, but he showed no signs of falling. "I can stand," he said, and his head was still held up, and he said it quite grandly. "I told thee thou could as soon as thou stopped being afraid," answered Dickon, "and that stopped." "Yes, I've stopped," said Colin. Then suddenly he remembered something Mary had said. "Are you making magic?" he asked sharply. Dickon's curly mouth spread in a cheerful grin. "Thou'st doing thy magic thyself," he said. "It's same magic as made those air all work out of the earth." He touched with his thick boot a clump of crocus in the grass. Colin looked down at them. "Aye," he said slowly. "There could be bigger magic than that there. There could be." He drew himself up straighter than ever. "I'm going to walk to that tree," he said, pointing to one a few feet away from him. "I'm going to be standing there when Weatherstaff comes here. I can rest against the tree if I like. When I want to sit down, I will sit down, but not before. Bring a rug from the chair." He walked to the tree, and though Dickon held his arm, he was wonderfully steady. When he stood against the tree trunk, it was not too plain that he supported himself against it, and he still held himself so straight that he looked tall. When Ben Weatherstaff came through the door in the wall, he saw him standing there. He heard Mary muttering something under her breath. "What art thou saying?" he asked rather testily, because he did not want the attention distracted from the long, thin, straight boy figure and proud face. But she did not tell him. What she was saying was this: "You can do it. You can do it. I told you you can. You can do it. You can. You can." She was saying it to Colin because she wanted to make magic and keep him on his feet looking like that. She could not bear that he should give in before Ben Weatherstaff. He did not give in. She was uplifted by a sudden feeling that he looked quite beautiful in spite of his thinness. He fixed his eyes on Ben Weatherstaff in his funny, imperious way. "Look at me," he commanded. "Look at me all over. Am I a hunchback? Have I got crooked legs?" Ben Weatherstaff had not quite got over his emotion, but he had recovered a little and answered in almost his usual way. "Not her," he said. "Not that sort. What's that I've been doing with thyself? Hiding out and not letting folks think you were crippling half-witted." Half-witted?" said Colin angrily. "Who thought that?" "Lot of fool," said Ben. "The world's full of jackasses braying, and they never bray now but lies. What did thou shut up thyself up for?" "Everyone thought I was going to die," said Colin shortly. "I'm not." And he said it with such decision Ben Weatherstaff looked him over, up and down and up. "That die?" he said with dry exultation. "Not with our sort. Thou's got too much pluck in thee. When I see thee put these legs on the ground in such a hurry, I know that was all right. Sit thee down on the rug a bit, young mister, and give me thy orders." There was a queer mixture of crabbed tenderness and shrewd understanding in his manner. Mary had poured out speech as rapidly as she could, and they had come down from the long walk. The chief thing to be remembered, she had told him, was that Colin was getting well. Getting well. The garden was doing it. No one must let him think about having humps or dying. The Rajah condescended to seat himself on a rug under the tree. "What work do you do in the garden, Weatherstaff?" he inquired. "Anything I'm told to do," answered old Ben. "I keep on my favour because she liked me." "She?" said Colin. "The mother," answered Ben Weatherstaff. "My mother?" said Colin, and looked at him quietly. "This was her garden, wasn't it?" "Aye, it was that." And Ben Weatherstaff looked about him too. "She were main fond of it." "It is my garden now," And I am fond of it. I shall come here every day, announced Colin, but it is to be a secret. My orders are that no one is to know that we come here. Dickon and my cousin have worked and made it come alive. I shall send for you sometimes to help, but you must come when no one can see you. Ben Weatherstaff's face twisted itself in a dry old smile. I'll come here before nobody seen me, he said. What? Exclaimed Colin. When? Last time I was here, rubbing his chin, looking round. Well, about 2 years ago. But no one has been in it for 10 years, cried Colin. There was no door. I'm no one, said old Ben dryly, and I didn't come through the door, I came over the wall. The rheumatitis in my back has kept me out for the last 2 years. They're coming to a bit pruning, cried Dickon. I couldn't make out how it had been done. She was fond of it, she was, Ben Weatherstaff said slowly, and she was such a pretty young thing. She says to me once, Ben, she said, laughing, if I'm ever ill or if I go away, you must take care of my roses. When she did go away, the orders was no one was to ever come nigh. But I come, with grumpy obstinacy. Over the wall I come until the rheumatics stopped me, and I did a bit of work once a year. She'd give me her orders first. It wouldn't have been as wick if I hadn't done it, said Dickon. I did wonder. I'm so glad you did it, Weatherstaff, said Colin. You'll know how to keep it secret. Aye, I know, sir, answered Ben. It'll be easier for a man with rheumatics to come in through the door. On the grass near the tree, Mary had dropped her trowel. Colin stretched out his hand and took it up. An odd expression came into his face as he began to scratch at the earth. His thin hand was weak enough, but presently, as they watched him, Mary, with quite breathless interest, he drove the end of the trowel into the soil and turned some over. You can do it. You can do it, said Mary to herself. I tell you, you can. Dickon's round eyes were full of eager curiousness, but he said not a word. Ben Weatherstaff looked on with interest. Colin persevered. After he had turned over a few trowels of soil, he spoke excellently to Dickon in his best Yorkshire. I said that might have me walking here and same other folk, and they said might have me digging. Thou was just leering to please me, and it's the only first day I've walked, and here I am digging. Ben Weatherstaff's mouth fell open when he heard him, but he ended by chuckling. Aye, he said, sounds as if it got wits enough. Thou art a Yorkshire lad for sure. Thou art digging too. I'd like to plant a bit of something. I can get a rose in a pot. Go and get it, said Colin, digging excitedly. Quick, quick. It was done quickly enough. Ben Weatherstaff went his way, forgetting rheumatitis. Dickon took his spade and dug the hole deeper and wider than a new digger with his thin white hands could make it. Mary slipped out to run and bring back a watering can. When Dickon had deepened the hole, Colin went on turning the soft earth over and over. He looked up and Colin went on. He looked up at the sky, flushed and glowing with the strangely new exercise, slight as it was. I want to do it before the sun goes down. Before it goes quite down, he said. Mary thought perhaps the sun had held back a few minutes just on purpose. Ben Weatherstaff brought the rose in its pot from the greenhouse. He hobbled over the grass as fast as he could. He had begun to be excited too. He knelt down by the hole and broke the pot from the mold. Here, lad, he said, handing the plant to Colin. Set it in the earth thyself, same as the king does when he goes to a new place. The thin white hands shook a little, and Colin's flush grew deeper as he set the rose in the mold and held it there while Ben made firm the earth. It was filled in and pressed down and made steady. Mary was leaning forward on her hands and knees. Soot had flown down and marched forward to see what was being done. Nut and Shell chattered about from the cherry tree. It's planted, said Colin at last, and the sun is only slipping over the edge. Help me up, Dickon. I want to be standing when it goes. That's part of the magic. And Dickon helped him, and the magic, or whatever it was, so gave him strength that when the sun did slip over the edge, and the end of the strange, lovely afternoon for them. There he actually stood on his own 2 feet, laughing. And that's the end of chapter 22.